Hi, everybody. I'm a raging papist. Thanks for joining me. It's really late at night, but I found an awesome article to read that I thought I might share with you guys. It's by Mark Yurah on Social Matters. It's called "How the Pope Got Pwned," and I think it's really good. So I'm gonna go. It's long though, so bear with me if you want. I'm gonna read the article, and then I will share my thoughts, not just on the article, but I do want to talk a bit about Pope Francis, Catholicism, specifically within the alt-right, what it means to me as a nationalist, and how I kind of am able to rectify that with the sort of race realism and the white nationalist, which I'm not a white nationalist, but how I'm able to use Christianity to incorporate it into my beliefs on sticking by your race. Okay, so here we go. How the Pope Got Pwned by Mark Yurah. Last Thursday, Pope Francis made international headlines after washing the feet of a series of illegal migrants who were staying at a center outside of Rome. Ostensibly an act of charity and humility, the international press piously listed the religious faiths of the migrants as Muslim, Orthodox, Hindu, and Catholic. More importantly, this multi-denominational crowd came from Mali, Eritrea, Syria, and Pakistan. As has been standard fare for the so-called migrant crisis in Europe, not a single purported refugee has escaped war and poverty in Ukraine, though apparently every other geographic area in the world is represented among the migrating crowds receiving papal TLC. The Pope criticized what he called Europe's anesthetized conscience when it comes to these migrants. A day or two after Pope Francis carried out this media stunt, I attended Mass at a Croatian Catholic church in a fairly large Midwestern city. The church was built in the 20th century to serve another kind of migrant, the Catholic immigrant to America from Europe who worked in the Rust Belt factory. Despite recent construction, the building was refreshingly free of concrete and steel. Mass was done in a mix of Croatian and broken English. Inquiry revealed that the English was used for the benefit of the flus savinus in attendance. The priest took time to proclaim that secularism and relativism would not prevail against the church throughout the 21st century. Above the altar, surrounded by palm branches, was a painted Croatian coat of arms in the early pre-1991 style, used by long-gone Croatian monarchical and fascist regimes. The national symbol displayed above the altar is not unique. When I visited the Hungarian town of Esztergom, whose mayor you may recognize, I noticed that the local church also had a large Hungarian coat of arms painted above the altar. From what I understood, the priest there was a close ally of the far-right mayor, who split off from Jobbik because it was insufficiently right-wing and founded a small crypto-monarchist, ultra-nationalist, irredentist party. In Catholic Slovakia, Marian Kolteba is making clerical fascism fashionable again. Here is a Polish priest who is the new face of Polish nationalism. After you've opened all those links, open the first one again and take a look at Pope Francis kissing the feet of an illegal African migrant. What gives? There's a segment of the secular right-wingers from the Anglosphere who think that Christianity, or some sect thereof, is inherently globalist, universalist, anti-national, subversive, or otherwise degenerate. The gross number of North American churches sponsoring resettlement of Somalis and other undesirables from the Third World into conservative, white communities provide ample evidence to point to. When the Pope himself sides with illegal Middle Eastern and African migrants to Europe and makes passive-aggressive snipes at Donald Trump for his border policy, the perception is hardened. A pithy quote from Oswald Spengler that Christianity is the grandmother of Bolshevism, and the case is settled. While this perception may be easy to uphold in the lands of megachurches, Glenn Beck Kool-Aid drinkers, and gay female bishops, it is far more dubious in places where the priests hang out with local far-right politicians. In Western countries, it may be typical for a conservative congregation to attend church only to receive a lecture on tolerance and equality. But in Eastern Europe, it's more likely that the congregants will find the clergy too conservative, even nationalist. Keep in mind that Pope Francis's immediate predecessor was in the Hitler Youth as a teenager, and he only stepped down in 2013. There's a divergence of ideological directions in Christianity, and in particular in the Roman Catholic Church, that has to be accounted for. How to do so? Best to begin with another question. Why exactly did Pope Francis do what he did? It's just charity is a very questionable claim. There are homeless Catholic believers all over Europe. There are Catholics in poverty all over Europe. There are probably 12 homeless or impoverished Catholics whose feet the Pope could have washed in Rome itself. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of European Catholic victims of illegal Muslim or non-European aliens just in the last year, suffering from rape, theft, murder, and so on. Yet who does the Pope single out to make a point about charity? Are there not 12 European Catholics who are suffering enough to merit the Pope's attention? Why is the Pope ignoring the suffering at home in Italy and in Europe just to give his attention to a group of illegal migrants from far away, many of whom aren't even Christian, let alone Catholic? The Pope is making a big deal out of ecumenism and egalitarianism, but since when is the Pope this is great. But since when is the Pope of all religions, or the Pope of humanity, rather than the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church? What's going on here is obvious to everybody, although they may not have the right words to express it. The Pope is not exemplifying charitable spirit as a result of wisdom and reason. The Pope is exemplifying charitable spirit in the way Moldberg's cathedral would like him to exemplify it, only towards non-Europeans and primarily towards non-Christians. How does the Pope conclude that this group of cultural and religious aliens are the most deserving of his attention? Funnily enough, the international media, staffed largely by atheist progressives and secular Jews, seems to have reached this conclusion long before the Pope did. How much of a jump is it to imagine that they reached this conclusion for him? It seems that Pope Francis is not acting based on his own judgment and reason as the vicar of Christ on earth. Pope Francis is acting based on the judgment of the New York Times. The Pope, whether he knows it or not, has surrendered sovereignty and control of his attention to the media. The Pope is pwned. In Eastern Europe, the New York Times had no readership until the 1990s, and it has not had enough time and power to become the source organ of information for majorities of Eastern European Christians like it has in the West. Persecuted by militant atheists, the church under communism actually became stronger in a way, in a sort of spiritual hormesis. Christians, and particularly Catholics in the West, voted for social democratic parties and soft Marxists for decades, while Eastern Christians struggled to keep the faith alive and well. Fast forward to 2016, and the church in the West has become essentially synonymous with the cathedral. Discrimination and judgment of the poor and suffering have been wholly outsourced to the New York Times and the Open Society Foundation, and nobody seems to notice. The same is not true of the church in the East. While the Russian Orthodox Church has become fairly obviously tied to the interests of the Russian state, something similar seems to have happened to the branches of the Catholic Church in Central and Eastern Europe. Catholic populations in this part of the world never got the same doses of progressivism that American, Italian, French, or Hispanic populations did. These countries seem to have retained a concomitant level of sovereignty. Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia, and the Czech Republic are doing a solid job of resisting EU directives to resettle Middle Eastern migrants in their countries, expand press freedoms, and cede control of national policy to bureaucrats in Brussels. It's difficult to ignore the fact that the church remains Catholic, as opposed to liberal progressive, in the same countries where the government remains sovereign and resistant to Western control. It would seem to be the case that the ideological direction of a local religion will tend towards the interests of the local state. Where the state is the cathedral, the church follows suit, straight into dogmatic egalitarianism and relativism. Where the state hasn't been subsumed entirely, has achieved some measure of military, economic, and geopolitical independence, and has a sovereign government, the church becomes, or remains, right-wing, traditional, and nationalist, just like the locals would prefer it. In the long term, we may be looking at a deep chasm within the Roman Catholic Church. What happened between the mainstream church and the society of Pope Pius X may happen on a larger scale between the Catholics of Eastern Europe and the Catholics of the West and the rest. As France, Germany, etc. repopulate themselves with dysfunctional Muslims and become quasi-failed states, the governments of less powerful Eastern European countries will find it less attractive to imitate Western countries and more straightforward to oppose and resist their demands, whether the demands go through official mouthpieces like the EU or the US State Department, or unofficial mouthpieces like the Vatican or mainstream media. States on the historical rise will not allow their national churches and religions to oppose or subvert them. Russia is getting closer every day to declaring ultra-conservative by the book Russian Orthodox Christianity a state religion, and if it did, it would be because the state determined the religion would secure the state's power against rival domestic and foreign entities. Poland and Hungary may eventually need to do the same. Militantly self-efficacing Catholicism will not replace traditional Catholicism in countries where the state finds an interest in maintaining traditional Catholicism as well as the means to maintain it. The Pope may be pwned, but all of his followers are not. There have been several Romes throughout history already. It's not inconceivable that Warsaw becomes the fourth. That is the article by Mark Yurah, which I thought was really fantastic. So I'll go ahead and give my thoughts now on my views on Pope Francis. I was originally led to start questioning Pope Francis, not just by his policies. Obviously, I long for Benedict. Benedict, if you don't know, that was the last pope who mysteriously stepped down in a way that popes don't step down. You know, they don't do that. You go until you die, and then the College of Cardinals elects a new one. Which seems to be, there's evidence to suggest that Pope Francis was brought in to be the counterpoint to Pope Benedict, who was conservative. Pope Benedict was all about restoring Europe, Catholicism, Christianity for Europe. That is our religious root. That is our foundation. We are all Christian in Europe, and he wanted to bring this back. And so Benedict went on tours across, Germany. He actually got into a big fight in Germany because he gave a speech there where he said, there can be no such thing as holy war. We denounce what Muslims say is holy war. Jihad is not holy. War is not holy. And of course, that set off all the progressives and even the neocons, guys on the center right, because they're like saying you can't chastise. You cannot chastise Muslims, right? This was about a decade ago, so this was old. Before people started waking up to the trauma that they're undergoing now. But I've always kind of held the belief that you don't attack the king, right? You don't bite the hand that feeds. You don't go after your leader. You be his, I don't know, what's the name of it, loyal opposition. Or if not loyal opposition, counsel, restrained counsel. He is the vicar of Christ on earth, as the article mentioned. He is supposed to be the good shepherd that guides Europe, not the world, but Europe and Christians to heaven, basically. I'll just come out and say it. And I genuinely liked Pope Francis in the beginning. When he first came to power, into his glorious reign, he did all kinds of stunts, public stunts. I don't think they were stunts, though. I think they were genuine. Sort of, he's carrying his own bag, and he's trying to leave the Vatican, and he calls people on their phones that call the Vatican to talk about prayer, and he meets with all these groups of people. That all seemed like really good stuff. But at the same time that he was trying to appeal to everybody, as the article kind of hints at, well, it doesn't hint at, it tells you, there was a distinct group of people that escaped his notice. And that was actual Catholicism. That was everybody else. That I don't know. Maybe he just felt. Maybe he feels that, well, they're already Catholic, or maybe he feels that they're just not important right now. And if that is, they're not important as Europe should not be the focus right now. I want to focus on the third world and migrants and all these people. Bring Christianity to them, which is, again, that's fine. Bring Christianity to the unbelievers is all good. But what has happened in the past decade? I mean, for God's sake, look at Europe. Look at the gross secularization of the West. Look at the absolute bottoming out of spirituality in the West. Look at Ireland, the bastion of Catholicism. My God, they would churn out priests for the world. I mean, no matter what church you went to, I feel like everybody knew there was an Irish priest there somewhere. That was the big kind of joke, is that Ireland makes priests. And then I remember hearing a disturbing report a couple of years ago and not thinking anything of it, that this was the first year that Ireland failed to produce a priest. Now, think about that for a second. The entire nation of Ireland, the peoples of Ireland, the Catholic stronghold, the bastion of Christianity in Ireland, the entire country didn't produce a single priest. Not a single one. And of course, next year there were a couple, I think. But I remember hearing that and thinking, wow, that's really bizarre, how strange that is, but not thinking anything of it. Now you fast forward a couple years, and the gay marriage debate is seizing everyone. It's going across Europe like wildfire. It's about to hit the United States. And Ireland, Catholic Ireland, votes yes. Love wins. Bring gay marriage here. And I was stunned. I'm like, I don't know, where did this love for the sodomites come from? Like where? I mean, surely we all knew. I thought we all did. I thought we all knew the values of the family and the importance of that, of maintaining our homogeneous culture and our religion, for God's sake. We're all Catholic. We're all Christian. And when you start to look at the demographics of the voters, and this is where I started to take a look, because I was just so stunned that they actually did this. When you start to look at the numbers of the people that voted yes, the majority of Irish people are not actually Catholic anymore. I mean, they might call themselves cultural Catholic or cultural Christian, but even that's a stretch. That's what the more enlightened person does. Most Irish people, as far as I know, are just they're just there. They're just secularists. They're just atheists. They don't think about religion. It doesn't mean anything to them. It doesn't mean anything to their culture or their race, for God's sake. It doesn't. It's just there. It was that thing that their parents did. Oh yeah, and when they were young, they were dragged to church. They didn't like that. They didn't like that. It's boring. It's boring. So when they got old enough to make the decision themselves, they stopped. And that's fine if a couple people do that. Several hundred people did, maybe even several thousand people do that. But then the nation stopped doing that. They just stopped. And within 1 to 2 generations, the religion, the culture has vanished. And you are left with a people that are entirely moldable by the left, by progressives. They can teach them anything now because they have no foundation for their culture. It's gone. And how does that lead back to Pope Francis? Well, the only question that I have for him is, where were you? Where were you when this was going down? Where were you when when Ireland was determining, should we have gay marriage? Why didn't you fly there? I mean, you should have been walking hands in hands with people to the voting booth. Like, where were the speeches? And then I extend that everywhere. Like, look at and I mentioned this to Babylonian Hebrew in his interview with me. Look at Germany and the Pegida rallies. I think it's called Pegida. Forgive me if it's not. But there are nationalist movements going on there that are Christian, that want to celebrate their Christianity and defend it. To defend German culture. And the Catholic Church, the cathedral, this beautiful cathedral, centuries old, the people gather out front and they turn the lights off because they don't want to be viewed in the backdrop of this hateful, racist, bigoted march. These are the people that are fighting for you. These are the people that are fighting for the West. Where were you? Were you for them? Because you might be from Argentina. You might have in Argentina. I don't know what kind of government they have there. I've heard everything from fascism to communist to authoritarian democratic, but they're all Catholic. I have no idea how Pope Francis was raised or what ideologies were thrust upon him in his youth. But that's all, frankly, that's all by the wayside now. He is the vicar of Christ for us. You have to put aside whatever, I don't know, maybe pro-Argentinian thoughts that you have, because you're supposed to lead all of Europe. You're supposed to lead all of us now, beyond even your personal ideology. And where were you for those German Catholics? German Christians. You know, it's all well and good to ask for charity and to seek, you know, holiness and piety and all these things for the world. You should be doing that. As the article points out, that is a slam against that many people on the alt-right. Well, not many, but it feels like many sometimes. But some on the alt-right, I've heard them. They've said this to me. View that Catholicism and Christianity, well, first of all, it's not white, which is kind of ridiculous because it's been white for 2,000 years at the very least. So, and then you have the whole Jewish master thing. Whatever. I don't have time for that. We need a white religion for white people, and that's the religion of your ancestors for the past 2,000 years. But you know, it feeds into the globalist agenda, right? But it's not supposed to be feeding into the globalist agenda. This is Christianity. This is moral objectivity. You know, we are not relativists. The things that are good that we want for ourselves, we rightly want those for other people. I want to be charitable to other people of other cultures and other nations, but that doesn't take focus away from who we are. And as the article points out, if there are people that are struggling in third world non-Christian countries, that's unfortunate. That's bad. Poverty is there. Poverty is not a good thing. But what about the poverty of Christians? What about our own people? I don't understand where the Pope's coming from, and I think he is a leftist who has been given a seat of tremendous power and authority, and he was placed in there to do damage to all the things that Benedict did. I don't buy it that Pope Benedict hit his head and up. Well, he woke up one morning. He's a 70-year-old man. He knocked his head on the dresser. Oops! And now he can't be Pope anymore. Instead, we have to give it to a Marxist. Just something bad happened there. I don't think that Pope Francis is an anti-pope, but Western Catholicism has got to get its shit together. And I know I'm part of Western Catholicism, and it's so true because the church that I go to is I'm lucky is that I go to a right-wing priest, and the church is always packed, and we're talking about pro-Catholic things, pro-Western, pro-American things. But I can drive several blocks just away from my house, go to another Catholic church, and the guy will get up there and he will just start talking about how we need to be loving. We pray for the Muslims. We pray for the Muslims in the Middle East that they become enlightened and they want peace. Well, I say fuck that. I pray for the Muslims in the Middle East that they adopt a real fucking religion, that they become Catholic, that they become Christian at the very least, and then they set aside their blaspheming, heretical, violent, disgusting, barbarous ways. That's my prayer for Islam in the Middle East. Just I don't know what has brought this on with us in the West. Maybe it's the fact that when the Soviet Union went down, we didn't have any struggles anymore, right? Like maybe we just became too self-confident. Maybe we thought, well, Marxism is dead. We killed it. We outlasted it. And there's nothing to fight anymore. There's no reason to rally around the church. But that's kind of bewildering in itself because, yeah, the Soviet Union collapsed, but that's a nation. Did the ideology of Marxism die? I don't think so. It's been proven once again. It was just proven a failure. But I mean, did it die? No, of course it didn't die. It was an idea. You have to outlive the idea. And so maybe then we just stopped. I don't know. Maybe we thought we were better than it in some capacity. I don't know. But it's very disheartening. I don't like Pope Francis, and I want to. I want to like him as my king, as the leader of Christianity, or at least of Catholicism at the very least. Uh, and I say that because, like, you have to understand, when I view like the Russian Orthodox or the Greek Orthodox or the Coptics, I consider them Catholic because they are sister branches. And that's why we in the West, well, traditionally, I don't know if Pope Francis would say this, because I think he might just say that we're just one more branch. But one holy Catholic apostolic church. That is what Christianity was supposed to be. They are sister branches. That's all it was supposed to be. That's why they are Catholic as well. So it's very disheartening to watch Pope Francis do what he does, and to just welcome all these migrants that are destroying Europe. They do it gleefully. And then when I say, why don't we stand up for ourselves, I am then labeled as it's really funny. The leftist will say I'm not being Catholic because I'm not being open, but then the far right person will say I'm not being Catholic because I'm not essentially chastising and kicking them out enough. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. So a question I had before was, how do I reconcile my nationalism with Catholicism? What is that? How do you do that? And you could extend it to white nationalism, I suppose, if you really wanted to. But one of the things that I do is I've always viewed Christianity as the religion of all of us. Well, because it was the religion of Europe. Paganism had died. Red Ice Radio can fuck right off. But we had Christendom. Everyone in Europe was Christian, and yet we all had our own nation states. We all had our own tribes. We all had our own ethnicities, our own cultures, our own ways of life. Those, to me, are the things that when I say I am a nationalist, I am looking to those things. Americans have a spirit. They have an idea. They have commonalities that bind them. Race used to be one of those, but not even. We have come to pride ourselves on our diversity. So race is no longer one of the things that brings homogeneity. But in Europe, they certainly had that. France for the French, England for the English, Scotland for the Scottish, Wales for the Welsh. I mean, they came together in unions, some of these countries, but even in those unions, the Scots didn't stop being Scottish. The same way that when Christianity spread to these peoples, they didn't stop being what they were. In fact, they were made stronger. And I'm not trying to use like some progressive Marxist, they've been enriched. Yeah, this all enriched the Europeans. No, but they gave them values and organization that would stand the test of time. All of a sudden, anyone could give glory to the family, see the significance of the family and what it represents and why it's needed. But Catholicism and Christianity as a whole was able to codify that. We codified that into theology to say this is natural law. We know it is natural law because it works, and it's perfect. We know that if the family is sustained, a viable, long-lasting culture, a viable, long-lasting society will flourish. And if that life is being flourished, then if that life is flourishing, then clearly that must be what God wants. And so I view Christianity as a great unifier. It's like in the Middle Ages, we were able to, in the Middle Ages, we still had tribal feuds. We still went to war for any number of reasons between two lords. We went to war for resources, for money, for all these things. But when the infidels attacked at Lepanto, during the Reconquista, during the Crusades, during the Arab conquests, when the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, was falling apart, one of the things that brought us together, it wasn't the fact that we were all white. that you could probably make the argument that might have been, well, I see you as a common guy compared to the Arab who is slightly darker. But the thing that brought us together was that Christianity, because we all pray to the same God, and we are all children of that same God. So even the Greek Byzantine, he is my brother. You see that? So if the Muhammadan is striking a Christian, then all Christians have been struck. But that's obviously not the same as if a German is struck. Well, I as a British, I don't, or I as a Welshman, I don't care. What does that have to do with me? But if the Germans are Catholic and I am Catholic as well, all of a sudden that means something now. It's like, well, I should kick in. As soon as the Muhammadans have been kicked out, yeah, we can go back to our conflicts. But we all need to agree here that the Muhammadans have got to go. Because they are a threat to everything that we have. They are a threat to us as people. They are a threat to us as nations and as religion. I mean, obviously we will unite. And with the secularization of the West, it's actually, I should stop calling it secularization. It's not secular. It's atheism is what this is. And with that has come massive holes in our fabric. Because what culture is there to fight for now? We don't have religion. We don't have this thing that unites us. We're all secular materialists. Morality is purely subjective. There's nothing objective about it, which means you do the thing that either brings you pleasure or gives you that utilitarian fulfillment. It benefits you. And so with that understanding, you will sell out your fellow white man. You will sell out your fellow white, your fellow Brit, your fellow person of your fellow nation, and you have no religion. So what does that matter? So these migrants then coming in that are unified because they share a common culture and a common faith and a common understanding that you are their enemy. They want your shit. They are coming to take your stuff. How can you pull people to rally for you? How can a German Christian tell a German atheist who is progressive, come stand beside me, brother? What's he going to say? Well, I should stand beside you as because we're both German. Okay, that's the nation. But even then, what value is in the nation? What value is in the race that we share, our common ancestry, if there's no culture to back it up? What culture has Europe produced? What culture has the West produced recently? Nothing. It's all become degenerate. It's all just become, just infiltrated and completely self-sabotaged by the left. And I think that's what happened to the church too. I honestly do. I think that during the 60s, there's ample evidence. You can read the KGB documents yourself. In fact, I may post an article here sooner rather than later, hopefully, about the KGB infiltration of monasteries, which spread this destructive liberation theology that Christ came for the poor. And when I mean he came for the poor, I don't mean he's there to be charitable. I mean he's there to emancipate. So kill your masters. Kill the people that would chain you. And they spread this garbage. And it left people with no idea what to do. What kind of Christianity is this now? It's like, well, it's whatever you want it to be. That's the progressive wants you to do, because the progressive knows that if Christianity is eroded, then the West has no culture. They have no bedrock to form a culture on. Without that culture, they can be moved in any direction you want. Anything. There's now nothing that's too extreme. There's now nothing that's beyond the scope of what you can do. So, it's just very. It places us in a lot of awkward positions. So that's kind of how I reconcile my faith with my belief in race, because again, the thing that I suppose I'll go ahead and say it now. The thing that separates me from like a white nationalist is that would a white nation for my people define? Yeah, of course. Who doesn't want homogeneity? Do I want my country to balkanize, which is a Marxist theory anyway? They were the ones that came up with the United States is going to fall apart. That was part of their rhetoric. I don't know why it's caught on now, but do I want us to balkanize? No. Do I want civil war? No. But I know that I want my people to survive. I know that because of my Catholicism, I want a strong, powerful, vibrant culture to be part of that. And that's what I want to live. Because if I have culture, I can see the goodness of my race. I can see the goodness of being Western. I can see the goodness of being American. So that's part of my plea for sort of a nationalist Catholicism that is race realist. Do I think that we should be striking out against people of other races? Of course not. No, that's unchristian, but they should keep to themselves. How about Africa for the Africans? I want them all to be Christian, of course. Then we have common grounds, because then commerce can happen. But let's be clear, Africa for the Africans, America for Americans. I see this as, I see the racial disparity in America as just an absolute failure of being able to cope with a changing culture that, when I say changing, I mean declining. That has nothing to stand for. No one knows what to stand for now, so you can stand for whatever you want. And now you're all going to butt heads because no one's going to be able to agree. And while you are eroding yourself, the progressive will seize power. Yeah. And then the Mohammedans being at the gate, well, for the progressives, while the rest of the townspeople are all bickering amongst themselves, trying to find a proper way to live, the progressive will simply unlock the gate for the Mohammedans to come in. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing in Europe. Because the Germans, the French, the Italians, they're all too busy bickering about what their culture should be, what should be the German ideal. And as they're having these political discussions and determining who they are, their leaders, their masters, are just absolutely sabotaging them. Angela Merkel, just it's really amazing how that works out. The progressives will simply unlock the gates and let the enemies in while you're too busy fighting amongst yourselves, and then you're all dead. So it was all for nothing. So, Pope Francis, I wanted to like you. Anyway, I hope that sheds some light upon my views of Christianity. What does that mean for race and then the nation? Because they are not. I don't think that they can be inseparable. I've been told that, and so again, let me reiterate one final time. Oh, holy smokes! I have a person that is watching me. But I'll just reiterate one final moment. Many people have told me in the alt-right that race trumps religion, right? That we must unite around our shared either racial identity or national identity, and I think that's a fine idea. Those are things to rally around. However, you are inherently setting yourself up for failure if that is your sole focus. If race is your sole focus, or even the nation, if that is your sole focus, you are going to fail unless you can very distinctly say, this is what my race is. This is what my nation is. This is what it stands for. And that's why I think that if white nationalists want to save the white race, then the first step is not just to say fight for your race, because again, no one's going to be on board with that besides people in the alt-right who think the way you do. No one's going to be on board with that. And you're going to be throwing out basically 75% of all white people, because that's not how they think. They have been duped by the progressives. They don't see things that way. Resuscitate your culture. If you resuscitate the culture, then all of a sudden being white being American, being British, being a national, all of a sudden that means something. And then you can say, well, what does it mean to be white? Well, then you can say, well, it means to be Western. What is Western? Well, it means that we have these various ideological values, that we value objective morality, that we have common roots in our faith and our ancestry. And then you can define that. And as you might know from debating a leftist, what's the one thing they don't want you to do? What's the thing that you can't be allowed to define anything? They're going to stop you from doing that. Because words have meaning and power, obviously. So that is how I would encourage white nationalists to resuscitate resuscitate our race, for God's sake. And I'm not a white nationalist because I see it as I think these people pleb out a bit too hard. It's too LARPy, too edgy, and I'm interested much more in the thought process of, okay, I agree with you that our demographics are in decline. I want to do something about it, but talking about race war now and let's just start kicking people out. That's not a realistic solution. That's not going to work. As I've already outlined, you're going to be fighting all your other whites who are liberal now. Liberalism is the cancer. Progressivism is the cancer. If you treat that cancer, these things have to be taken in a systematic order. And I think the alt-right could do something truly great. Wow, I have gotten so far off topic from Pope Francis and the article, but I just really wanted to vent my feelings on all these things, because there's a schism going on right now on the alt-right between National Socialism, white nationalism, and everything else that is not the 1488er crowd and civic nationalism and all this stuff. And I can't tell you where I stand because I don't know. All I can tell you is when I see an argument that I think is bad or fallacious, then I don't like that argument. And it dissuades me from then adopting that position. So, okay, how about this? I'll deal with one more thing, because now I have 3 people watching me. So I'll deal with the immigrant crisis and how I reconcile that with my wanting to preserve Christian culture and homogeneous societies. I said this on Millennial Bo's channel. This got me a lot of heat, but whatever. It was the idea that I'm going to look out for my fellow man, my fellow Christian in the Middle East. That means something to me, and it's critical that I am able to do that. It's critical that I can view Middle Easterners who are Catholic or Christian and identify with them, because if I can't do that, then how can I identify with the Germans? How can I identify with the French? I can easily say, it's not my problem. I'm not German. It's not my problem. I'm not French. What do I care? And again, their race means nothing because they have so little culture now. They don't produce anything. So why should I care? But for the Christian immigrant, I want them out of the Middle East. They can't be allowed to stay there because they are being massacred. They are my people. Same way that Europeans, I would argue, are my people. The Christian is my people. Now, does that mean that I want them to come to the United States and, we're just going to take care of them? The United States, we didn't have a welfare system, although it's constantly growing now. But what would be fantastic would be that they come here, we take care of them, and then we make a place for them in the Middle East. Take it back, and then they go take it back. Either we train them, or we get volunteers, or whatever have you. I'm not a general. I don't know the logistics, the feasibility of that, but that would be beneficial. Also, I don't see if it's really that bad if a couple of them want to stay here in America. They are Christian. They are going to have similar world values as we do. They value the family. They value their tribe. They value their culture and society, their civilization. They will have common ideologies. They could theoretically get along with us. So I don't see a reason just to chuck them into the sea because of a different race. And so when you see that that their Christianity means something. It allows you to touch that intangible. It allows you to make tangible the intangible. Because now I see value in my brothers and sisters in Europe. I see it for a plethora of reasons. Because in my mind, I see white culture as being Christian culture. I see it as all the things that we've invented since all the things that we should be taking pride upon. If Black lives matter, then white lives matter. And I'm not going to allow a progressive to tell me not to take pride in who I am and what I have done. So that's how I encourage people to, learn your history. Don't just take my word for it. Look into it yourself. Start pondering your Christianity. If you're not Christian, then at the very least know your history. Know the history of your people. And I don't mean all of it. Yes, all of it. You learn about the pre-Christian era. Learn about the BC era. Learn about everything. Learn history, and then you will be able to see, this is where my people come from. This is the culture. These are our values. This is who we are right now, and I want to preserve and hold on to this because there is value in that. So. Pope Francis, come back to Catholicism. You are needed. I don't want to hear about what I'm supposed to be doing for the migrants that hate me and are not Catholic. You are the Pope for us. You are the Pope for the West. What do I? Heal the West, for God's sake. Heal the West that is under siege. When the West is free, then we can talk about the poor Africans and the poor migrants all day long. Okay. Help yourself. It's like that old expression. Instead of removing the splinter from his eye, take the plank from your own. That's what we got to do here. Because without Western culture and Western civilization, what is the point of being good to the migrant, to the third worlder? Why try to spread Christianity and Catholicism to these people if there is no Catholicism? If there is no Western culture to spread to these people? Who cares? It's just, he has played so well into the Marxist hands, and it's disgusting. I'm sorry to say it. I can't believe I'm saying this about the Vicar of Christ. So anyway, if people want, I can talk more about these individual issues. This was just supposed to be about the article, my reaction to it and things, but if people would like me to specifically talk about, then drop me a message or comment or something like that, and I will speak about that more in depth. These are my initial thoughts on sort of reconciling Christianity with nationalism, with the ethno-state, with white national, with all of it. How I put it all together for me. So hope you enjoyed the article. Give them a look, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.